Energy is a super important variable within the human body to maintain our essence. To such a degree, it's hard to differentiate between what the essence is, that is to say, maintaining life, or is it to produce energy? Because many of our biochemical reactions and systems in the body are focused on producing energy, maintaining energy, storing energy, and acquiring energy. So let's take a closer look at this. Energy is used to do work in our body, and there's a number of different types of work. There's chemical, which is the formation of biomolecules. So we can break bonds of molecules to liberate energy, but it's going to take energy to produce our biomolecules or to synthesize biomolecules. Transport, absorption of food, moving ions and molecules against their gradients are a form of work. And then there's mechanical work, that is to say, the whipping action of a flagella, muscle activity, and the movement of cilia, to name a few. So before we move further, it'd be worth our while to talk about the laws of thermodynamics. The first law of thermodynamics, conservation of energy, suggests that the total amount of energy in the universe is constant. Energy is neither gained or lost in a closed system. But one really important thing for us to keep in mind, the human body is not a closed system, so we are constantly losing energy. The second law of thermodynamics deals with the concept of entropy, which suggests that things tend to move from an ordered system to disorder. And that's the case with the human body, where we will require energy to maintain order in the body. So one really important thing to consider, all the energy that humans consume or produce derives from sunlight. And plants harness that energy via the process of photosynthesis. Unfortunately, humans cannot do that. So we need to consume molecules in the environment and break those down to produce energy in the form of ATP. And ATP is really just a currency that we utilize to transfer energy from these biomolecules to systems in our body or processes in our bodies that require work. And we do that via the process of cellular respiration. There are three different forms of energy that really concern us within human physiology. They are chemical energy, kinetic energy, and potential energy. Chemical energy is the energy acquired via the breaking of bonds. For example, when we look at the molecule of ATP, if we break bonds of ATP, that's going to liberate energy that we can use to do work. There's also kinetic energy, which we've talked about in previous lectures, and that's the energy created by the motion of molecules or ions moving down their chemical or concentration gradients. It is the energy created by the motion of these molecules or ions. And then there's potential energy, and that's stored energy based on the position of a molecule or ion. And that has everything to do with the concentration gradients or chemical gradients that we just talked about. That is to say, sodium, which has a high concentration outside of the cell, has potential energy. It turns into kinetic energy once sodium moves into cells. So this is a really interesting depiction, and this is describing cyanide. So I'm going to read a brief synopsis of the importance of ATP and energy in our body. A steady supply of ATP is so critical that a poison which attacks any of the proteins used in ATP production kills the organism in minutes. There are roughly 100 trillion cells in our body and about 1 billion molecules of ATP per cell. So what's 100,000 trillion times 1 billion? I have no idea, but it's a lot. There's a lot of ATP in our body that are required to keep our body in homeostasis. And this 90 pounds, I believe the quote is, our body requires roughly 90 pounds worth of ATP a day to keep our body functioning. And hopefully it should seem evident to all of us that that's impossible to have 90 pounds of ATP in our body. So we have to continually produce and make ATP. Here is the ATP molecule, adenosine triphosphates. What I want to point out here are the negative charges on these phosphate ions. There's 3 phosphate ions on the left side of this molecule. And as we remember from chemistry and physics, like charges do not like to be around each other. As a result, this molecule is like a loaded spring, with those phosphate ions trying to liberate themselves or get away from each other. If you cleave one of these bonds, then you're going to liberate a bunch of energy. This is ATP. We'll talk about this in detail and how it's produced.